In tech, everyone steals. It's the engine of progress. But there's one exception. The dock in macOS and the Start button in Windows. The one single UI element that Apple and Microsoft have refused to copy from each other for 30 years. This is no accident. This decision hides their answer to the biggest question of all. What is a computer even for? And as we'll see, their answers are polar opposites. In this video, we'll see how Microsoft conquered user fear with verbs, how Apple bet on tangible objects, and why they can never truly copy each other. To get why they'll never be the same, we need to jump back to the 90s. Both companies were on the edge of a cliff, forced to reinvent themselves. This was Windows before '95. The main thing was the program manager, and it was fundamentally broken. Your list of apps in Windows 3.1 was just a regular window. You could minimize it, you could lose it behind other windows. You could even accidentally close it and be left staring at an empty desktop. Imagine being able to just close the home screen on your iPhone. Internal research showed 40% of users couldn't even open a second app at the same time. Newbies would often open multiple copies of the same app, which quickly caused the system to overload and crash. This completely broke the core promise of Windows, multitasking. Remember, there was no taskbar back then. The killer feature of the world's most popular OS just didn't work. This was my first operating system. I was a kid, but to run Warcraft or Civilization, it was easier to just open MS-DOS. And I was a bright 6-year-old, but no genius. So you see why, even with a monopoly on graphical operating systems, Microsoft was spooked by these stats. But how does Microsoft usually fix its mess? It finds a solution somebody else built and copies it. And usually that solution is at Apple. Nope. macOS was in way worse shape. Long story short, not only did it have similar interface issues, but the whole system was about 10 times less stable. And that's the first, most important answer to our question. Why didn't they just steal from each other? Simple. There was nothing to steal. So both companies started the hunt for a fix. Microsoft began testing Project Chicago, which would become Windows 95. Apple was in its death throes, and with its last breath, it bought Next. This wasn't just to get its hands on the stable Next Step operating system, it was to get its main asset back, Steve Jobs. And inside Next Step, a solution was already waiting. The stage was set. Two companies backed into a corner were cooking up two totally different answers to the same question. Where do I start? Microsoft's answer came from studying monkeys. That's what behavioral scientist Daniel Oren did before he joined Microsoft. And he was about to shape Microsoft's design philosophy for decades. He and the Chicago team realized the problem wasn't technical, it was psychological. Users were scared of the computer. They were afraid they would break something. And surprise, that's because things broke a lot. Technically, the fix was easy, even back then. The team made a system button with a menu inside it, containing all the important stuff. Technical problem solved. But the psychological one wasn't. Users would not click the button. Then they changed one word. And suddenly users started clicking it without fear. Zero changes to the features. Just one word, start instead of system. The result was mind-blowing. People clicked it without a second thought. This is where Microsoft got brilliant. They built their entire philosophy on what they learned. They made a list of verbs, run, find, documents. A clear, safe, text-based guide for anyone who felt lost. They didn't give the user a tool. They gave them a guide with simple one-word commands. It sounds so logical. What could Apple possibly do to counter that? Well, at the same time, Apple was busy making its interface so good you'd want to lick it, as Jobs once joked. At first glance, it looks like chaos. How does this compete with the clean, verb-driven hierarchy of Windows? Apple's answer was the dock. Unlike the Start menu, the dock isn't a list. It's a place, a shelf, a space where you keep your things. It's a collection of nouns, Finder, Mail, Photoshop, beautiful tangible objects. Apple didn't give you instructions. It gave you a space that felt like the real world. Now, fast forward to today. Look at how we manage complex information. Tools like Notion and Obsidian are exploding in popularity. Their foundation is rigid structure. Pages inside pages, tags, databases. Why do we force our brains into these boxes? Because it's the direct legacy of the philosophy Windows built 30 years ago. It's system integration mode. You trade your brain's natural associative way of thinking for machine logic. In return, you get a superpower. You can manage complexity your brain could never handle alone. But what if your goal isn't to organize what exists, but to create something new? For that, our brains need a totally different mode. By the way, there are no sponsored ads in this video. That's made possible entirely by you, my paid members. You're the ones who get to see these videos a week before anyone else, and you watch them completely ad-free. I turn off YouTube's monetization for members, so there are no ad breaks and no brand integrations. Enter another universe. Miro, FigJam, freeform. No folders, no hierarchy. Just an endless canvas and objects on it. Pure productive chaos. And we need this chaos. This is the legacy of Apple's philosophy, the blank canvas mode. It hides the structure so it doesn't get in your way. It's for brainstorming, for finding non-linear connections, for giving birth to ideas. It's for letting us be human with all the creative mess in our heads. So that old stereotype, Macs for creatives, PCs for business, it's not a myth. It's the direct result of two companies choosing to amplify two different modes of human thought. One taught us to be the system, the other taught us to stay on the canvas. So why don't they just steal from each other? The final answer. Because Start isn't just a button, it's the physical tip of the entire Windows iceberg. It's hardwired into the file system, the registry, the program files folder is just the visible peak of a massive hidden architecture. And the dock isn't just a panel. It's the expression of macOS's object-oriented soul, where every app is a self-contained package you can just drag and drop. For one to copy the other, they'd have to tear down their entire foundation and start over. Understanding this explains that feeling of friction you sometimes get with tech. When you try to sketch a messy mind map in a structured tool like Excel, you're not fighting the software. You're fighting its philosophy. You're trying to paint on a canvas that was never meant for painting. And this isn't the only place where a simple design choice hides a deep principle. Things like depth, space, and even trust are all designed. For instance, the blur effect completely changed how we perceive layers in an interface. Its story is a fascinating mix of technology, psychology, and art. I dive deep into that story in my video, Apple Design: How Blur Changed Everything. If that sounds interesting, click the link on the screen now. If you'd like to support my work and join, you can click the join button right below this video. The links are also in the description and in the pinned comment. It helps me out a great deal. Thank you.